Good evening. This is a meeting of the Groton Board of Education. It's a special meeting being held on Monday, May 11th at 5:05 p.m. in Central Office in Room 11. It's being held in person and online. In person this evening we have Ian Thomas, Jen White, Mitch Shimbrock, and myself, Bev Washington. And online we have Sean Cochran, Dr. Andrea Ackerman, Adrian Johnson, and Jay Whitlock. And of course we have our assistant superintendent, the principal of the high school. We have Shannon, our grants writer, and Kennedy, director of IT. And the first item on the agenda is discussion of possible action regarding approval of the Wit and Wisdom ELA grade 6 through 8 curriculum resource. It's attachment number 1. Mitch, do you want to read that motion?
I'd like to make the motion that we approve the ELA grade 6 to 8 curriculum resource.
Do I have a second?
I can second.
Second, Jen. Okay, the curriculum, Mitch, do you want to say anything?
I don't think there's much I could add. We had some, significant discussion about it at the curriculum meeting, and I think this is continuing on with, correct me if I'm wrong, Anne Marie, K through 5. So this is the second half of that, and it would maintain consistency about how the school goes about developing the curriculums with students. So we all voted in favor of it.
All right, turn it over to Dr. Manson. Thank you, Mitch.
Welcome.
All right, thank you. Thanks again for the opportunity to present this to you. Again, as Mr. Shimbrock just spoke about, I'm going to present today a recommendation for moving forward a new resource for English language arts, specifically the Wit and Wisdom resource. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about the process that we went through before the selection, so that everyone understands, that we went through a comprehensive process and how we wound up to making this recommendation. So the agenda for tonight is as follows. Number 1, I'm going to go over the rationale. Why do we need a new resource in English language arts? Number 2, I'm going to review the information gathering process and the pilot process, and then take questions and answers. Of course, anyone can feel free to ask me questions during the presentation as well. So I want to, of course, always review the information as it's related to our strategic plan. Specifically, this falls under pillar number 1, which is accelerate academic achievement. We always want to make sure that we are focused on improving student outcomes. And I do believe that making a shift or a transition to a new resource for English language arts at the secondary level, specifically grades 6 through 8, will improve our student outcomes. And I'm going to speak to that in just 1 second, actually probably on the next slide. Maybe it's a couple slides in. So our goal here is to select a research-based and standards-aligned resource that serves as the foundation for our middle school English language arts curriculum. So why do we need a new resource in grades 6 through 8, specifically in English language arts? There are 3 main reasons. Number 1, it supports improved student outcomes. Number 2, this new resource is going to provide our teachers with high-quality instructional materials. And number 3, it's going to establish instructional coherence in grades 6 through 8. Really, what it's going to do is it's going to establish instructional coherence in grades K through 8, because we've already adopted this resource in K through 5 a few years ago. So the first reason I'm going to talk about in more depth here is that it supports improved student outcomes. And this is the slide I was just referencing a couple of seconds ago. You can see in 2019, we had some pretty reasonably respectable scores in English language arts at the middle school level. But since 2019, of course, the pandemic happened in 2020, and there was no state testing. But since then, at that point, we've seen a significant decrease in our student performance at the middle level. Now, we're not unlike a lot of districts nationwide. Only 1 in 3 districts have fully recovered from the pandemic. But you can see at the 6th grade level, our students performance has decreased by 6 percentage points. At the 7th and 8th grade level, we've seen an even more significant decrease at 15 percentage points and 18 percentage points respectively. Now, there's a couple of reasons for this. We know, of course, again, the pandemic had a significant impact academically on our students, but there's a couple of other things that I can contribute this to. Now, again, I wasn't here, so I'm really just kind of guessing and also gathering information from our teachers. The first thing I would say is that we transitioned to a new building. From what I understand, we were in some smaller middle schools at that time, and so we transitioned to a new, larger building. And with that transition, there was also a schedule adjustment in which the students are not seeing teachers every day. And so I think that, from what I understand from our teachers, they really believe that that's had a significant impact on our students, not being able to see them every day, only seeing them every other day in these large blocks of time. So that's a concern that they have, and I believe that that probably has had a little bit of an impact. I think another thing that is concerning for them is that, with the pandemic, we've had students on screens more often. Now, again, I think that a lot of districts made this move that, we had to immediately, because of the pandemic, shift and put kids on laptops and transition our learning in that way. And as a result, that was something that our students got accustomed to and our teachers got accustomed to, using more digital technology. But as a result, especially in English language arts, we want kids, reading text and writing. And I think in literacy in particular, this did not necessarily improve student outcomes. It really had a negative effect. That might be the English teacher in me that, really is more of a purist, wants to see kids reading and writing and having, I always call it time on text, but really their eyes in a book and writing. Certainly there's a benefit to, using the laptops for that as well, but I can't say enough about some of those old school tools and actually physically writing things, revising, reading in a physical, in a text, whether it be a textbook or an actual novel. And I do feel like that had an impact on some student learning, particularly in English language arts. Another thing I want to make mention of here is around 2023 or 2024, I know there were some significant budget cuts here in Groton, and we lost some academic leadership in several of our content areas, English language arts being one of them, and I do feel like that may have contributed also to the negative impact in our scores. So there's a couple of factors here. I know our teachers are working really hard, in no way, shape, or form am I blaming our students, who I'm sure are working really hard, or our teachers, who I know are working hard as well, or our leaders. I just think there are a lot of factors that have come together that have, resulted in what we're seeing here. I want to talk also about a second reason why I'm making this recommendation to make a transition to the Wisdom program. The current program that we're using is Teachers College Readers and Writers Workshop. And there's a couple of things that you're probably aware of because you've, you made this transition before at the K-5 level. But you probably are aware that this program is no longer supported by the State Department of Education and by literacy experts in the field of education because of its approach to reading. It relies too heavily on leveling. Students don't have access to reading books that are at grade level. It often, really what it does is it recommends that students read books at their grade level. Well, if I'm a student, and right now it says that I'm a fifth grader, but it says I should be reading grade 2 texts, it never pushes me to read, to be exposed to texts at my grade level. That does not help me. It prepares students inadequately for the rigors of high school, and it doesn't systematically build their content knowledge. The other thing that you do when you provide teachers with high-quality instructional materials, that's, by the way, the acronym HQIM, is that there's three things that I'm arguing here. Number one, it's beneficial for students because there's a link between high-quality instructional materials and positive learning outcomes. Now, I want to say here that I've linked, by the way, the research that I've done on this in the slides, so that's why you can see here that this is a hyperlink. So if you want to go in and read the information that is attached to this, I've included it. It's also beneficial for teachers When teachers have access to high-quality instructional materials, they spend less time of their own time looking for materials and less time of their own time creating materials. And we want to make sure that our teachers are not doing all of this extra work, all this extra work on their own time, preparing materials for students. That means our teachers are less stressed out. They're less likely to feel teacher burnout or professional burnout when we provide them with everything that they have, and they don't have to do all this work on their own time. We hear a lot about how teachers are feeling all this stress or professional burnout. Well, again, when they have everything that they need, they don't have to do all of this on their own. And then finally, providing them with high-quality instructional materials improves the quality of the instruction that we're delivering on a daily basis in our classroom. That means our standards are aligned, we have quality control, and the effectiveness of the content that we're delivering to our students is, well put together. We know that quality. Now, you might say, well, how do you know that Wit and Wisdom is a high-quality instructional materials? Well, I've done that research for you. I went to Ed Reports, which is an independent agency that rates the qualities of these materials, and they rate the quality on 3 different what they call gateways, but basically 3 different expectations. The first is text complexity and quality, the second is on building knowledge, and the third is on usability. For grades 6 through 8, Wit and Wisdom has met the expectations. It really rated 100% in all 3 levels. Wit and Wisdom was also rated by a second independent rating system, or I would say a second independent I don't want to, what you would call it, a second independent kind of organization, and it's called the Knowledge Matters Campaign, and it looked at this particular program for rich text, connectiveness between reading and writing, and then other aspects. And it also rated Wit and Wisdom the highest level that it could give it. The publisher of Wit and Wisdom was highlighted by the New York Times in an article written by Goldstein in December of 2025. I've also linked this article for your view if you'd like to read it, for the program's emphasis on having students read full text rather than short excerpts. I want to just comment on this. Following the pandemic, a lot of publishers came out with resources that really just focused on having students read really short pieces or excerpts of novels. They just thought that the kids' attention span was not where it should be, and so they just thought, okay, well, let's just dumb things down for the kids, and rather than push kids to increase their reading stamina, they instead said, okay, well, we just won't push them to read full novels or longer texts. And we know that's not what's best for students. If we want to prepare them for college or even the SAT, or I would say high school, we want them to read full text. And so Wit and Wisdom does that. The third thing, or the third reason that I believe that Wit and Wisdom is the right program for us is that it establishes program coherence. Our current model, as you know, our K-5 students are engaged in the Wit and Wisdom program, and right now our 6 through 8 students are engaged in Teachers College Readers and Writers Workshop. The graphic here on the right shows you what happens when there's no instructional coherence. So you see the yellow oval in the middle says that inconsistent student learning, the districts that have this have inconsistent student learning opportunities and outcomes. And I think that you probably remember that when I showed you the data from a couple of slides ago, that's what we saw, that that some years we had students that were progressing just fine, like in 2019. But following that, we saw some outcomes that were really not that positive. We saw inconsistent data across grades or classrooms. There was no vision or expectations for rigor, and that there were inconsistent practices or materials. And I'm seeing a little bit of that as I talk to teachers. Some teachers are realizing that Teachers College Readers and Writers Workshop they understand that that's not something that's supported by the State Department of Education, so they're supplementing right now with materials that they find. And again, we don't want that teachers kind of doing their own thing, because that means our students are getting really I might be an 8th grade student in one class that's getting materials, that my teacher creates. I might be a student in another class that's getting the teacher's college materials, and then there's a third student in another teacher's class that's getting something completely different. We can't do that, because that means our students are going to be performing all over the place, and we won't be able to isolate what's working and what's not. So you might be wondering, okay, what's the process, Anne-Marie, that you went through to select these materials? Well, I went through an extensive process, and our teachers, of course, really helped me through this. The other thing I want to kind of reference here is that I kept notes all through the year in terms of comparing the resources and documenting that. And if you want to look at the notes that I kept, that's linked in this document here, the ELA Resource Comparison Review document. So please feel free. I wasn't able to incorporate all that information extensively in this PowerPoint. I tried to incorporate some of the information, but if you want to look at how I documented it throughout the year, please click on that document. You'll see how I was able to keep track of all of the information I collected throughout the year. So I've kind of shared here, created a timeline of how we kind of collected information through the various resources that we kind of consulted. So starting in August of this year, we started working with Common Lit 360. That was one of a highly rated resource that our teachers were interested in. They actually started talking to me about Common Lit 360 last spring, and so that's why we started with Common Lit. Our 6th and 7th grade teachers piloted a unit in the fall, early fall, through October. Very early on, by October, they decided, based on the I would say the feedback from the students and their own feedback, that they felt like the units in Common Lit 360, while they were relatively rigorous, they felt the students were bored and felt like the resource had a lot of worksheets, and the students almost dreaded doing the work in that curriculum. And so we started by November looking at other resources. I used the November PD date to meet with the entire ELA team and just look at selecting other resources to explore. We, of course, went right to Ed Reports, and we only looked at what were the highest rated resources for middle school. We didn't even entertain anything that didn't have all greens as a part of their, I would say, gateways. We brought in two main resources from that point. We brought in Great Minds, which we knew, of course, had been working at our elementary level to do a presentation for us on wit and wisdom. That was in December. And we brought in Savas, who did a presentation for us. Their middle school curriculum or program is called the My Perspectives program. From those two presentations, our teachers selected what they wanted to pilot. Our 6th grade decided they wanted to pilot the My Perspectives. The 7th grade decided they wanted to go ahead and pilot the Wit and Wisdom. And our 8th grade wanted to give a little bit more time to the Common Lit. To the Common Lit pilot, because they felt like they needed to give it a little bit more time. At the same time, they also decided that they would try a variety of things through the Wit and Wisdom and the Savas, and also go and visit classrooms that were doing Wit and Wisdom. So I set up additional classroom visits at the elementary level for March, Wit and Wisdom in our elementary program, as well as a visit to one of the middle schools in the area at Haddam-Killing specifically, Haddam-Killingworth Middle School, that had been implementing Wit and Wisdom at the middle school level, so that our teachers could get like a really full view of what was happening. The other thing that I want to note is that I also started doing research on programs or districts that had been implementing these programs, and to see and making phone calls and just saying, can you talk to me about the successes that you've had in implementing these programs and what challenges that you've had. Those notes are in that document, and I've tried to capture a little bit of those the feedback that I got from those people the ones that called me back. Many people did, some people didn't. But the people that did call me back and gave me feedback, I tried to incorporate some of those notes or some of that feedback in this document, as well as in that resource comparison document that I just shared with you that is linked there. So pilot number 1, again, I want to talk a little bit about this. This resource was piloted by all 3 grade levels. Grades 6 and 7 piloted first in the fall, whereas grade 8 piloted in the spring. Our direct feedback from our Groton Public Schools teachers, they felt that units were often overloaded with stories that were too repetitive. The lessons had to be pulled apart and supplemented with teacher-created material, which again, we don't want. We want our teachers to feel, not as much stress in terms of creating their own materials, and that the text and skill development were rigorous, but there was a need to supplement, again, for grammar instruction. And additionally, they felt that the structure was too tight, that it was practically a scripted curriculum, and teachers generally don't like that, and I don't blame them. You shouldn't feel like that you're standing up there reading from a script. So that led us to, look into other resources. That led us into pilot number 2, which was piloted by our grade 6 team. The My Perspectives program is being used at the middle school level by 3 other Connecticut districts. That's Waterbury, East Windsor, and Norwich. Now, again, when I went ahead and made calls to those districts, Waterbury did not call me back, but I did get calls back from East Windsor and Norwich, and they were very helpful to me. Our grade 6 teachers liked the diverse text. They liked the built-in diagnostic assessment that was part of this program, and the amount of choice that was available as a part of this resource. And the students, they felt, liked the text selections. Norwich and East Windsor gave me this feedback, that the digital platform was really difficult to navigate, and that the amount of choice is almost overwhelming to our teachers. And I have to say that teachers that did pilot, they let me know too that they liked the choice, but it was a lot of choice, and they were nervous that moving forward, this would kind of create a large amount of differentiation that, again, would almost say that the experience of the students in our schools would be too wide if we went in this direction. And that student engagement in the reading selections was pretty high. Pilot number 3, again, was our Wit and Wisdom program, which was piloted by our 7th grade team. Again, you know that this is currently being used by our K-5 program, and several other districts at the middle school level, including Haddam-Killingworth and Eastline is using it starting this year as well. Our 7th grade teachers shared that the engagement in the pilot was really strong, and the lessons were accessible and appropriately rigorous for our students. Teachers at Haddam-Killingworth liked the Socratic seminars, the text selection, and the deep dives, which are specifically grammar-focused lessons within the program, and the accessibility of the resource to all students. After 1 year, by the way, of implementation, now I'm not making any guarantees, but I'm letting you know that this is what Haddam-Killingworth said, that they saw increases of 9 percentage points in one grade, 7 percentage points in another, grade 7, and 8 percentage points in grade 9 percentage points in grade 8. So they have seen significant growth. They're, I believe, in year 2 or 3 at the middle school level, but they've seen significant growth in just after their first year of implementation. And I do believe that if we implement this program and fully support our teachers in the implementation process, that we'll start to see improvements just as we've started to see in the K-5 level. So my recommendation is for this program. Now, I want to tell you a little bit more about this program, and I know that this board, because you selected it at the K-5 level, you know about this program, but for those people that may be new on the board and not know as much about it, this program is designed around the science of reading. It uses complex text to build the students' background knowledge. And I want to share a little story. I was recently visiting one of our grade 2 teams in one of our schools, and they were looking at pieces of student writing. They were in Module 4. The students in grade 2 had just finished a writing piece that they called a focused question task, and it was about the digestive system. And these kids were using terms in a second grade writing piece that I had never even myself had heard of, because they were writing about this complex system of digestion that I probably should know more about and maybe learned about in like high school or college level biology class. But I was so impressed with the academic vocabulary they were using and how they were describing the digestive process in second grade. I mean, I'm thinking, if they're doing this in second grade, can you imagine what they're going to be doing by the time that they get to the middle school level? I was just completely blown away. And then the teachers were looking so critically at it and saying, these kids are really capable of more. I can't believe that, in May, they're not doing a little bit better. And I was like, whoa, like these guys are really, I just was so impressed with what the kids were coming up with, and then the level of expectation that our teachers had, because they know what the kids are capable of this point. As a teacher, I have always said, when we expect more of our kids, we get more out of them, and that's what I'm really seeing right now as a result of what we're implementing in literacy. Anyway, I digress, but I thought that was really important to share. It integrates reading, writing, speaking, and listening through the study of rich, authentic texts and works of art, which I think our kids have really enjoyed at the elementary level. And it provides sample dialogue and clear structures, but it's not a scripted program. And I think that's so important for our teachers. It allows them to adapt lessons based on the needs of our students. In terms of other key features of this program, it's, again, they're all based on modules, otherwise what we would normally call units. And the modules are really based on history, science, and literature. So you may have some examples here are the resilience in the Great Depression. We have that in grade 6, or a hero's journey. The kids study the Civil War. Students actually study the Civil War at earlier grades too, I believe in grade 5. They look at not only the male perspective, but they also study the female perspective and what that was like. And I really particularly like that. And in grade 8, they look at World War I. Students, again, are looking at high-quality, authentic texts, award-winning novels, primary source documents. They look at visual art and diverse perspectives, which, again, is so important to, I know, this district who, for a number of years, really made sure that our students were looking at or reading texts that reflected our population. They weren't just reading texts by, I would say, white men. They're looking at they're reading a variety of different perspectives. It really explores or sets up students to have specific instructional routines, bless you, in which they are, wondering, organizing, revealing, distilling, and knowing, and looking at those particular questions every time they look at a text. And then it incorporates built-in structures for struggling learners. Now, this is something that does have built-in structures for struggling learners at the K-5 level, but at the middle school level, there is a specific supplementary lessons called the prologue that was designed for multilingual learners, which, again, our teachers liked this aspect of it, or students with disabilities. It allows our teachers to front-load essential vocabulary and background knowledge that makes sure that all of our students, regardless of their learning needs, can access the lessons in the module. In terms of skills-based instruction, there is grammar instruction built in through the deep dives, and then also speaking and listening instruction built in through Socratic seminars. Now, again, our students at the K-5 level, they start working on Socratic seminars as early as kindergarten, and again, they don't look like they are going to look in the 8th grade or like what I used to run with my 10th and 12th grade students, but they do practice these Socratic seminars and speaking to one another. I always say that reading or learning really is a social process, and when students can actually talk to one another about their reading and their learning, it really enriches what they're learning. So I'm a firm believer in having students talk to one another about what they are reading, and this program does that. In terms of their writing, It really focuses on three different types of writing explicitly: argumentative, informative or explanatory writing, and then narrative. The narrative piece is much less of a focus, and that's obviously because at the middle school level that it's not as important. And I think that's really appropriate at this level. And let me tell you a little bit more about this. Students really, they learn to examine a mentor text, then they experiment with the writing through these focus question tasks, and then they execute a formal writing task through the end of unit assessments. And I just kind of talked about this. I'm going to skip that. So you may be asking me about implementation and costs, and I think that's a very good question. So first let me talk about implementation, because I think it's really important when you're going to implement something new that you provide adequate support for our teachers. So I have developed a plan in which teachers would be provided with 4 different levels or types of support in year 1. Number 1, they will have initial training on August 27th, which is our first day of PD for teachers. That will consist of a half-day launch training and a half-day of module study. And I have specifically designed this so our special education and our bilingual teachers will be included in this PD. Our teachers have asked for that, and I'm going to respond by making sure that they have those teachers are involved in that planning or that professional development. They will also have co-planning and co-teaching support with consultants from the publisher Great Minds, 2 days of that. They will have signs of reading PD. Our teachers have asked for that, and I have responded by organizing 2 sessions in which they will learn more about the signs of reading and how that can that training can help enhance the instruction in this area. And then they will have training specific to helping them pace out, because one of the things our teachers are concerned about is that this is a very comprehensive program, and they're a little worried about not being able to almost get through the entire thing. And so I'm going to make sure that our teachers will work with someone from Great Minds to pace this out, and then I'll make sure that someone meets with them throughout the year, whether it be myself or maybe Sarah Beth, our literacy person. Someone meets with them through the year to make sure that that their pacing kind of stays on track. Now let's talk about costs. And some of this, by the way, I want to let you know, has changed a little bit since I put this together last week, because I have been in constant conversation with the people at Great Minds to say, come on, I think you can do a little better, I think you can do a little better, and they have been responding. So the digital platform licenses for teachers and students, originally they quoted me just under $11,000, about $10,600, and again, they've given me some discounts through at this point. The Wit and Wisdom workbooks, again, at just under $52,000. The 4 days of professional learning. Now, some of the professional learning I've been able to offset through, we're still going to pay for it, but I've been able to use to pay for with Title I funds. So while we're going to pay for it, we'll be able to pull in some other funding to pay for it. At least the first day of PD, I'm going to be able to use our Title I funds. So again, we're still paying for it. I don't want to misrepresent anything, but we won't have to use board funds for that. And then also core text for $46,000. They're going to give me a 30% discount in this area. So all in, not counting the different areas where I'll be able to pull funding. Originally, the quote was for $110,000 or $107,000, somewhere in that range. The most recent quote was for $102,000 or $103,000. Again, $30,000 I will be able to pull from a DODEA grant, and some of the professional learning I will be able to pay for using Title I funds. That said, I know I just spoke really quickly because I know we have 2 presentations to do between now and 6 o'clock. I want to honor the other individuals' time. But who has questions for me? Because I'm sure all of you have many questions as well.
Jane?
Thank you. Always very comprehensive, and I appreciate the thoroughness of that. So thank you, always. and you don't need to answer these now. If you can answer them later. And I'll just spit it all out, and you can take it in any order. When we implemented it at the elementary school, right, we ended up spending more time was allocated to ELA. Is that going to be the same here, or is the amount that we're already spending going to be comparable to what you're proposing, or will there be a decrease in required time? So that's one. And then I just wanted to understand the segmentation so that you can, as they transition into high school, how can you determine like the people who are going to be like college ready versus IB/AP ready? And then I know when we implemented it, once again, at the elementary school level, some of the teachers were able to get hard copies to start ahead of time, and I wasn't sure if Witten Wisdom was offering that to you. So those were my 3 questions.
Okay, let me take your last question first. We have, Mr. Bass and I have gone ahead and ordered hard copies of teacher materials for the teachers that once we place the order, which I believe was just last week, they said they could turn around within 2 weeks' time so that our teachers would have them in advance before leaving the end of the school year. We have also asked teachers if they wanted to have summer work time to come in and basically work together to prepare materials, at least even for the first unit, so that they can work together and do that and have advanced preparation time, that we would pay them to come in and do that. And some teachers are taking us up on that opportunity if they're available. Many are. And so we've put that out there. The second question was on how will we know what students are, when they leave the middle school, are ready for like maybe IB, AP. The Smarter Balance actually, when we get Smarter Balance results, there is, that does provide us with some information about what students may be AP, IB ready. Of course, in the 8th grade, it's really hard to determine that with 100% certainty. Also, when students take the PSAT, you do get some information from that. So eventually we will get, it's hard to predict, like, in the 8th grade, who's going to be able to, be successful in some of those very rigorous courses and programs. But we will have some information from their Smarter Balance scores. We will get some information when they take the PSAT, and then that will help us to make determination. My argument with that is that we always want to push kids. I'm all in favor of an open enrollment in those types of courses, because anytime students get exposure to rigorous coursework, it's only going to help them in college. I think it's always great when kids take those courses and do well on those exams, but any exposure that they have in taking those courses is going to just, even if they don't do well on the exams, are going to just really help them succeed, I think, in college, because they get that experience of like, wow, these courses are hard, this is what it's like to take a course like this is what the reading is like, and so I think any of those experiences are just beneficial. The third question, I wasn't sure, Jen, what you were meaning when you said allocate time. I wasn't clear what you meant.
So when we consolidated into the middle school, and I could be incorrect, that we had longer blocks for, let's say, English. Are those blocks sufficient enough for the requirements of Witten Wisdom, or do we need to further extend the time? Because in elementary school, we had to extend the time.
So what I would say is they have time, they have plenty of time in terms of the amount of time that they have right now on a daily, because they're currently seeing students every other day. So in that way, they have enough time. But what I would also say is our teachers are really concerned that they would like to see the kids every day. And as you know, we are working on looking at options for how can we adjust so that they do see the kids every day. Now, we're not going to be able to pull that off for next year. I worked extensively this year with a committee, and we looked at a number of options. We weren't able to come up with something, but I'm hopeful that possibly a year from now we will be able to implement something, that's a matter of working with Principal Bass and Sam Singleton, who does the schedule. But I'm really hopeful that that's something, because that would also be helpful in math as well, as we implement a new program in math. But, I'm hopeful we can make that change. Can't make any guarantees.
I am too, from the presentation like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So looking forward to it. Thank you. And I agree with setting the bar higher rather than bringing it down, because it's better to fail trying to achieve something than supersede, but your bar is like at 0. So,
Agreed.
Sean, you have a question?
Yeah, well, first off, Emery, thank you for your thorough research and processes you went through in the selection of this. My question is, thank you for laying out the cost of that. I have 2 questions around that. One, what is the cost increase from the previous program we've been using? And the second question is this cost allocated in the budget?
So this cost has been included in the budget. If you recall, there was I incorporated into the teaching and learning budget $300,000, and that was for this program as well as the illustrative math. And I believe that was incorporated as like K-8 because the math was K-8 and this was 6-8. So you may or may not remember that, but that was included.
I was just making sure.
Yeah, and then I can't speak to what the Teachers College program was. I don't think any updates have been, and I have to have Susan jump in and speak to this, but no updates have been made in that program since it was purchased maybe 10 or more years ago.
There was a 5-year grant
Okay, so
for
it's a 5-year.
DODS. So there's always upfront costs, and I think that's what you're seeing, Sean, to get the number of books that we need. So that we have the rich libraries and make sure kids all have books so that they can have their eyes on print.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys crossing the T's and dotting the I's.
Dr. A, you have a question?
I just have 2. First of all, I want to say that you relayed a lot of my fears, Emery. My big concern was that there was no room for the teacher to have her own creativity. A lot of programs like this are like stand 2 feet from the board and say this, but you have allayed that. But I just wanted to know how in particular does this allow for teachers to bring their own creativity? That's my first question. How broad is that? And my second question is, I'm really interested in knowing how they integrate art into this. So you may not be able to answer that tonight, but maybe in another conversation we can have that. But that first one, what exactly does it mean when there's some leeway for a teacher to bring himself into this and his thinking on a lesson?
Yeah, I wish that we had some of our elementary school teachers here to speak about that, because I find that, at least in the first year, when I first started last year, that's when they were first implementing Wisdom, and I think in the beginning they found it was a little bit difficult to be a little bit more flexible with the lesson because they were learning the program. But as I enter classrooms this year and they're in year 2, they've found it to be much more flexible because they're more familiar with the program and they're obviously understand, not that they didn't understand their students' needs last year, but because of that familiarity with the program and the lessons, and now this is their second year doing it, they are just much more comfortable, Dr. A. And so with that familiarity, I think that they've just felt that now I feel comfortable making those adjustments based on my students' needs. We've done a lot of work at the elementary level this year with PLCs, and I think working then with their professional learning communities, for those people that may not know the acronym, I'm sorry, sometimes I go into educational speak. And I know you're familiar with that, Dr. A, but I know teachers are working together, so the grade 4 team may get together and say, okay, we're looking at these 3 lessons in module 4, and, based on what we understand about the kids in grade 3, we're going to change up, maybe we're going to place more of an emphasis on this lesson and a little bit less emphasis here. Maybe we're going to change up the order in this particular area. So, I'm going into these grade level PLC meetings on a regular basis the last couple of months, and I'm hearing these conversations all the time, and teachers have really been appreciative of saying, like, I'm saying that I trust you as professionals. You know your kids best, and if you want to make adjustments, go ahead and make them, because that's what you should be doing. So it may be a little bit difficult in year 1 for the middle school teachers to make those adjustments, but I think as they get more comfortable with the resource, they'll see that more.
I think my real question is, so I'm teaching this lesson, and I get a brilliant idea about another lesson that might enhance this, or and that would be like maybe reading a different story, another story, or whatever. And using I love the idea of using writing and looking at the writing and then implementing it for the students themselves. But what if I had that idea? How much flexibility would there be, or would I just have to say, oh, well, I can't do that?
No, I mean, I think that if something like that comes up and you have a story, I mean, I wouldn't say that someone should go off and teach Tale of Two Cities or something, but if we're talking about a story, then I would encourage people to go ahead and do that.
Okay, all right, okay. And then maybe another time when there's more time to give to the next group, we can talk about integrating art, because I would love to know about that.
Yeah, the art component is really neat. At any given day, I'm often going into classrooms and seeing how art is integrated into these lessons, and the kids really enjoy it. So I'd love to see you actually even come to some classrooms and see that with your own eyes. You'd really enjoy that.
Thank you. Okay. I'm going to try to lower my hand and not get thrown out of this. I've been thrown out 3 times, so let me see.
Okay.
Okay. Bye-bye. Here we go.
Thank you. Dean?
I'm just kind of curious, and this is more of a parliamentary question, but when we scheduled a special meeting for the 11th, I thought it was just to deal with the machine shop, wood shop, practice field type question. And I'm not sure, why was this included in the agenda?
The administration asked if we can...
Is there a time crunch, a deadline to get a vote on this?
They want to proceed with the program.
Yeah.
So.
Right, but it couldn't wait till the May regular.
We've got it now.
It's on the agenda, so let's move on. Any other questions for Anne Marie? Okay, are we ready to take a vote on Wit and Wisdom? All right, so the motion is to approve the Wit and Wisdom ELA grades 6 to 8 curriculum resource. If you're online, raise your hand. 1, 2. So,
Where's Jay?
Jay, okay, just write that down. Adrian, Andrea,
And is Sean there?
Jay. Sean, how are you voting? Oh, Sean has his hand up. I
Yes.
see. Okay, and in person, raise your hand if you're in favor. Okay, that passes 8-0. All right, next is
Thank you, Marie.
Thank you.
Dr. Mincy, a great presentation.
Thank you.
And it helps our students and more about that, so thank you. The next item is discussion and possible action regarding approval of the plan for the machine shop, for a machine shop and the auto shop at Fitch High School, and the proposed relocation of robotics team to the wood shop at Fitch High School by September 2026. Jen, can you make that motion, please?
Motion to approve the plan for a machine shop in the auto shop at Fitch High School and the proposed relocation of the robotics team to the wood shop at Fitch High School by September 2026.
Do you have a second? Mitch? Okay, I'll turn it over to Susan.
So I know we've had lots of discussions on planning for this. Working with the coaches, they wanted to be kind of in one location. At first, we got them at Fitch High School, which was a big goal, because they had been at Pleasant Valley for almost a decade, and the town was then selling the property. So it was really important to get them in a location, and they came to the machine shop, and they've been able to do some really good work there. When looking at it, I know that Chris and Sherry went into the auto shop, and Chris has come up with 2 plans. I know you got his latest plan attached to the agenda, as well as the machine shop plan attached to the agenda. So that's what we're looking at. The robotics team, or relocation to the robotics shop, we'll call it, instead of a wood shop. And then the machine shop in the auto shop, which we'll call a machine shop. And I know that we have Lori Ferguson here, we have Matt Brown, who has, as the principal, really oversees his facility use and makes sure that everybody kind of has what they need during the day. And then after school, he and Mark Romano share fields and spaces and cafeterias and every little bit of outdoor, indoor space during the school day and then after school to make sure that people have what they need. So he's here as well. Sam Kilpatrick has worked really hard as our facilities director in making sure that these things happen, and I know trying to move big machines and clean out a wood shop to get it ready is a big deal. We have right now, with Shannon's support, and Shannon, you're welcome to chime in here, but with Shannon's support with Mary Morrison, for instance, we found a relocator who's really going through the obsolete materials and cleaning it out so that we can get the building projects moving along. And we can take someone like this to do the same thing in the wood shop. I know we've asked Chris to kind of identify things that he does want to keep. There's a lot of tools in there and things that might be really valuable to both the team and for, other classes that might, need those kind of tools. So that's where we're at. I know that's what the vote is for tonight, just these 2 things. So,
Discussion. Ian?
I'd like to propose an amendment. Move that we also, in addition to the language of the original motion, add and instruct the superintendent to work with administration and coaches to develop and present at least 3 plan options for a permanent robotics practice field space to be presented to the Board of Ed for consideration no later than June 15th, 2026.
Do you have that in writing?
I do.
Can you pass it on, please? Because I couldn't write it that fast.
I'll second that.
Okay. Discussion on the amendment.
Would you read it again?
Well, okay.
It says, and instruct the superintendent to work with admin and coaches to develop and present
At least 3 options.
3 plan options for a permanent
Practice field.
practice field space to be presented to the Board of Ed for consideration no later than June 15, 2026. So Ian made the motion, Adrian seconded,
And if
and
I-
now we're in discussion phase.
Could I speak to it?
Mhm.
So, as I said before, like the 2 things are interrelated. So I think it's our responsibility to handle all the issues at play in one motion. And I don't think it is as fair to the robotics team that has existed organically with grassroots community support for close to 20 years, to have them sacrifice once again due to some challenges with planning long-term projects. It's been said that the EB program has been in process for 7 years, in development for 7 years, and So I find it a little troubling that all that time, that plan was in development, while there were no plans being developed for the robotics team. So I think it is incumbent upon us as a board to oversee the whole district in a fair and equitable fashion. And to that end, I think we owe it to the robotics team to make sure that they suffer no further losses or damages or unnecessary challenges due to, some issues on the administrative side.
I have a question for
Yeah,
you.
go ahead. And then Mitch.
I think you go, Mitch, if you want. If you're... Okay. So, Ian, what would you define as a successful plan by June 15th, you had mentioned?
The amendment is instructing the superintendent administration to develop at least 3 plan options for the board to consider. So I don't know what the reasonable exit ramp is here. I received a voicemail from the superintendent on Friday saying that there has been talks and there's been some designs discussed. So I am making this motion in order to hasten those conversations and bring it to a resolution, bring us the options so that we can get this done, get a choice made and a path started upon before the end of this school year, so that possibly throughout the summer we can make the changes necessary and have the robotics team fully operational by September 2026, the start of the next school year, so they can have the practice fields and the workshop.
Yeah. So the way the motion reads, we're still expecting them to move by September, right?
Yes.
And then we're just tightening it up to ensure that we have a plan, an action plan by June 15th.
Options to choose.
Options to choose. Okay.
Yeah, my thinking was that by June 15th, if we have the 3 options, we can have a COW meeting, where we can review the options and determine which ones we want to go with. And then by the regular meeting in June, we can vote on it and ratify it, at what the plan will be.
Mitch?
I'm curious as to if it's reasonable to expect that the administration can come up with 3 options by June 15th. I'll bet you they're pretty busy right now. So I'm going to pose that question to the superintendent if I have to go through you, I guess.
Go ahead.
So with that, with the first option really came to us from Chris, and it was a temporary option. So there were a couple that were temporary, and we had to see if they were going to make code. And then there was a couple that were permanent. So we can show what we've investigated so far with what the cost outlined, but we're not sure that in this budget, we've got to see what happens with our budget too. So, yeah, it is a little busy time, but we can show you what we have so far, I guess, by then.
Thank you.
It's going to be hard for me to vote on well, this is just a plan. Is this just a plan?
Just 3 options of a plan so that we can just keep the ball moving in the right direction.
Right.
What do you think, Matt? I spoke for you, but you're
No, I mean, I think
we
a
have
plan-
graduation on the 18th,
But we've already looked at
towards
some
the
of
end
the-
of the month, I think
Yes,
in
we got
June
a
is
lot
more
going on,
reasonable.
but I like the idea of, I think we can, because we've already been discussing it and sharing some of the things that we've been looking into. I think that's reasonable.
Okay. Thank you.
I can agree on the plan, but I can't commit to anything right now for cost because our budget is being cut $800,000 by the town council. We do not know what the RTM is going to do. Kathy Chase put on the table to cut our budget $1.9 million. So without that, I can't commit to even a fail. But if we just want to come up with a plan, you know,
We can do that.
a plan, could be the plan, then all right. But I without a course, I can't commit to anything at this point. Anybody else online? Dr. A?
My question, all we're asking for here are plans, that's all?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Of course, I would say, like, part of that plan would include a cost estimate.
Oh, we can share that.
Right. But for each and every plan.
That's, and wind speed for hurricanes.
Yeah.
Any other discussion, comments? All right. So the motion reads, I'm going to read the motion to approve the plan for the machine shop, for a machine shop in the auto shop at Fitch High School, and the proposed relocation of the robotics team to the wood shop at Fitch High School by September 2026, and instruct the superintendent to work with admin and coaches to develop and present at least 3 plan options for a permanent practice field space to be presented to the Board of Ed for consideration no later than June 15, 2026. And it was, that motion, that amendment was made by Ian and seconded by Adrian. Okay, Dr. A, hold on a second.
You have a question?
Hold on a second. Dr. A, have your hand still up?
No, this is a real question, so Adrian goes.
Okay, go ahead.
Are we going to vote on the amendment first before we vote on the full motion?
Yes, we'll vote on the amendment first. I was just reading it so everybody understands what the amendment is.
All right.
Okay. And this is doable for you, Superintendent Austin?
Yeah, we've got it laid out.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm happy to share.
Dr. A, you still have your hand up?
Yes, so this means, as I understand it, that this is for our consideration, and we're going to pick one of these plans. So that means that we are going to do this, whatever one we pick. Is that correct?
Depending on
That's the implication.
Well, that's if you pick one of the plans. You don't have to pick any of the plans that they come up with. You could say, I don't like any of the plans, and then have to come up with new plans.
Yeah, that's not how it read to me. It said, to me, it said, 3 is for our consideration so that we can pick what. That means we're going to do it.
Now, Ian.
I believe that the text of the amendment is just setting a deadline for the administration to present 3 options for a plan to move forward for us to consider no later than June 15th. So it's just setting a deadline for the plans to be presented to the board, and also for the board to consider them by that date. So like it could happen, June 15th is a Monday. That could happen, like the plans could be submitted as part of an agenda package prior to that meeting, and then, in accordance with FOI regulations, and then that Monday, June 15th, we could review them and consider them and decide what we want to do moving forward on that date. There's no commitment beyond that, just setting a deadline so that we can have 3 plans on the table to look at and consider, see where we are with that.
So that means that we don't have to pick that one, but Beverly is correct. We could say, no, we're not doing any one of these, and we're going to look for another one.
That is a potential outcome.
Thank you.
Any other comments? No? Okay, all those in favor of the motion as amended, raise your hand. Okay, so we have Sean. Excuse me?
May I ask a point of information?
Who's that?
Adrian.
Adrian?
Yes, Adrian. You just said the motion as amended, and I was saving comments on the motion in general, so I was waiting to vote on the amendment, and then the main motion. Is that not how we're doing it?
I think the chair may have misspoke, or maybe you misheard. We are voting on only the amendment.
Right.
Yes, we're only
Yeah,
voting
this is
on
the
the
vote
amendment.
for the amendment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Continue on.
All right. So we have Sean, Jay, Andrea, Adrian. Okay, Jen? Ian? Mitch, how do you vote?
No.
Yes and no. And I vote yes. Okay, so that passes 7 yes, and the 7 yeses were Sean, Jay, Andrea, Adrian, Jen, Ian, and myself, and Mitch votes no. Okay, so now we will vote on the motion as amended.
Just the
No, we
motion.
just did that.
Oh, the motion, okay.
Well, motion as amended.
Yeah, the motion as amended.
Any discussion on the main motion?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. So, I'm not gonna read it again, everybody knows what it is. All those in favor of the motion,
Is there going to be more discussion on the main motion?
what do you wanna say?
There should be around.
Go ahead.
Yeah, my question is because it looks like we're going to be forced to cut our budget and cut programs or services, at least at this point, with passing this machine shop, I believe we would be hiring a teacher to instruct machine and maybe robotics. And I know there's been lots of talk saying that there's no FTE because we're cutting other things with a retiring teacher, or we're cutting other programs with a retiring teacher. I would argue that this is an FTE addition. It's that we wouldn't be gaining an efficiency by not refilling that position. So I'm a little bit uncomfortable voting for this because we're having an FTE in a time when it looks like we're going to have to cut services to our children, that we're offering as it is.
Thank you.
So I'm going to, based on that, I'm going to abstain from this vote.
Okay. Sean? Sean, you have your hand up? Alright. Okay, so we're gonna vote now on the motion as amended. Online, can you raise your hand if you're in favor of the motion as amended? So Jay, Andrea, and Sean. Okay, here, Ian, Jen, Mitch, Bev, and abstain. Adrian, you're abstaining, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that motion carries 7 yes, 1 abstention, and 0 no's, if I have that correct. All right. We're all set. We got a machine shop.
Thank you.
We got a machine shop.
And I think Lori Ferguson, our terrific project manager, is there with us, and much appreciated.
All right. Do I, Sean, you want to say something? Okay. Do I have a motion for adjourn of the special meeting?
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, so moved.
Second.
Adjourn.
interview has
So
been
it's 6:11, and we are now adjourned. All those in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Okay. Opposed? Abstention? We're adjourned. Okay. 6:11. All right, got that done. Fine. Good evening. This is the meeting of the Groton Board of Education Committee of the Whole meeting being held on Monday, May 11, 2026 at 6:20 p.m. It's being held at the central office in room 11 in Highland. In attendance tonight, we have Sean Corcoran online. We have Adrian Johnson online. We have Jay Whitloff online, Dr. Andrea Ackerman, and in person, so far we have Mitch and myself. The first item on the agenda is review of the April 20th, 2026 meeting minutes, attachment number 1. Any comments on the minutes from April 20th, 2026? Okay, if none, the minutes are approved. Next is the presentation of the solar panels. I'll turn it over.
Beverly,
Yeah?
making a motion?
I don't know if you always have to make a motion on the minutes if there's no
I just
corrections.
want to know how you want to proceed.
Yeah, that's how I'm gonna
correct.
proceed.
Okay.
If I'm
then it's
mistaken,
approved.
okay. Next is the presentation of the solar panels.
All right.
That's
Sam?
attachment number 2.
Sam, are you going to introduce Katie, or do you want me to? Katie Shelton from the Green Bank has been working with us, looking at the plans for potential solar panels at Fitch High School in the parking lot area. So Katie, I'll turn it over to you.
Amazing. Thank you so much for the introduction. I work for the Connecticut Green Bank. We are a quasi-public state agency here in Connecticut. By way of a refresher, we did come before you all in the fall of 2025 to seek permission to include the Fitch High School project in our competitive RFP for contractor selection. The RFP went out in February of 2026, and we've reviewed the submissions and anticipate making award declarations likely this week. Today's presentation will focus on our recommended selection from that RFP and the project economics that would be associated with the carport installation at Fitch High School. Just as a quick recap of our program, the Solar MAP Plus program starts for Marketplace Assistance Program Plus at the Connecticut Green Bank. And it's a program where we provide no-cost technical assistance and project development support for solar installations on municipal and school facilities, affordable multifamily housing, and state agencies. We do a 2-part assessment where we start with a desktop review to scope and identify feasibilities for a specific site. If a project passes that initial screen, we move forward with a technical assessment where we go on site, look at the on-site conditions, and dial in the system size and production estimate. And that's information that ultimately gets pulled into a report for that competitive RFP process that I mentioned. The RFP took place in February of this year, where this project is pooled with a portfolio of other like municipal projects that we have in development. And again, we're at the point where we are reviewing RFP results and recommendations. And after today's meeting, we'll be seeking your approval at the meeting on the 26th to authorize the resolution to enter into a power purchase agreement for this specific project. Before I get into the economics of Fitch High School and the carport installation that we anticipate installing there, just wanted to do a quick recap of the 2 projects that we currently have installed with Groton Public Schools. The first being at Groton Middle School. It is a 305 kilowatt DC rooftop installation, and that system went operational in May of 2024. We analyzed a year period of data from July 25th, 2024 through July 27th, 2025. This was 12 months of bills that was provided to the Connecticut Green Bank do a quick historic look back in terms of your anticipated versus realized savings from this installation. Through the power purchase agreement that we had executed for this rooftop installation, you entered into a fixed rate contract with the Connecticut Green Bank to purchase the power that the system produced at a fixed rate for 20 years. And that fixed rate was 7.6 cents per kilowatt hour. Expected savings would have been $16,801 over a 12-month period. And the actual savings was just over $41,000 for the period that we analyzed. This is due to two main factors. First being that the system performed above and beyond our expectations, meaning that it produced more electricity than we were originally anticipating, less power that you had to purchase from the grid. And your utility rate, or offsettable utility rate with Eversource and your third-party supplier has increased over time. So the gap between that fixed PPA rate and what you're currently paying with the utility has increased substantially, meaning that your savings have accelerated over time. So exceeding expectations for this site, and this is Groton Middle School, and it's a power purchase agreement. Well, didn't come out of pocket for this investment. Green Bank for the development expenses associated with this installation, and you're benefiting from clean energy at a discounted rate that fits for 20 years. We also analyzed the Mystic River Magnet Pool project, slightly smaller installation here at just under 140 kilowatt DC rooftop project. Also went commercially operational in May of 2024. The fixed rate PPA that you entered into with the Connecticut Green Bank was 7.9 cents per kilowatt hour. And again, this system produced more electricity than we were originally anticipating, and your utility rate has accelerated above and beyond what we were originally anticipating. So the gap between this fixed rate PPA of 7.9 cents and what you're actually paying with the utility has increased over time, meaning your savings has accelerated since the system has gone operational. Expected savings was about $8,600, and the actual savings totaled just over $16,000 in the calculation that we completed. We're flagging here that the numbers I'm showing you on the screen was for a period of 11 months. We didn't have a full 12 months of data for this analysis. So all that to say, the Solar Map Plus program has an existing relationship with Groton Public Schools through these two installations. Systems have exceeded expectations in terms of performance, and you guys are saving money.
Thank you, Katie. That was really important information when we discussed. I thought the board would really like to see what has this done for us so far. So,
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Question?
Go ahead.
And I was out of the room there for a second, so this may have already been covered, but I'm looking a little in the packet. It's page 6. And there's some discussion about a carport system?
Yeah, we're not there
We're
yet.
not there yet.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Right
We didn't
where
miss
we are.
anything.
Right
Gotcha.
where she is, that's where we are.
So we
Alright.
looked at the past, Groton Middle and Mystic River, and they both accomplished more than what we had expected in
Got it.
savings.
Sorry,
Yeah.
that sounded like a summary statement. So
No,
that was the
no,
end of that
no.
part. All right,
In the
good, 'cause
beginning.
This I want to talk about, for sure. And that
Joan,
sounds great,
Joan,
thank you.
just a hot second, Joan. Jen and Ian came back at 6:24. Mitch.
Just for clarification, you said, it says in here that the as-built size for Groton Middle School was 305.2 kilowatt. Is that direct current, DC?
Yes, it's the DC system size.
Okay, well, that's got to be converted to AC for use in the schools and every place else, right?
Yes. So the savings calculation is based off of the realized system production.
Okay. And if the as-built size is 305.2 kilowatts, we must have produced more than that in actual kilowatt hours. to make
Correct.
this, so that contributed to the savings as well as the fact that we got a really good price.
That's right. So the actual system production here was 379,310 kilowatt hours over the period of time here. Right? For Groton Middle School and for Mystic River Magnet School, it was 150,233 kilowatt hours.
Okay. Who does the conversion to AC? Is that part of your equipment?
So we have a monitoring platform where we can see the system production, and that's what the calculations are all based off of.
Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, you continue on.
Perfect. So just a quick flag before we chat specifically about the Fitch High School carport project. The economics that we just showed you for Mystic River Magnet and the middle school are based off of a previous incentive program which has since been phased out. We are currently under a program called NRES, or the Non-Residential Renewable Energy Solutions Program. It's a mouthful, but just think of it as the commercial installation that is available for project development. From our last meeting, just as a quick reminder, there's a brand new carve-out of capacity that's exclusively available for public school solar projects that became available in 2025. And that's ultimately what we would look to take advantage of for the project at Fitch High School. The reason I'm flagging it is because the economics that you're about to see are based off of this carve-out in the commercial incentive program, where they are offering enhanced incentives for public school solar projects, and there are additional adders that are available for carport installations. So for Fitch High School specifically, we chose a carport project because there was concerns over the age and condition of the roof, and we knew that this new carve-out of incentives was available through the commercial incentive program. On the screen here, you're going to see the structure of what this project would look like. You would still use the power purchase agreement or PPA contract structure like we had for the previous two projects, but it would be slightly different in terms of how the economics work. So for the last two projects we looked at, the solar is designed to tie in behind the utility meter for the facility, and you're purchasing the power that the system produces at a reduced rate per kilowatt hour that's fixed for 20 years. For Fitch High School, we're utilizing a different incentive. It's called the buy-all, sell-all tariff, where instead of tying in behind your utility meter on site, we're going to be feeding the electricity back to the grid. Eversource is purchasing that power at a fixed rate contract for 20 years. The benefit to the school district is that you all will see on-bill monetary credits for every kilowatt hour of electricity that the system produces. And we're locking that in upfront through this power purchase agreement structure. So there's no out-of-pocket expense to the school district. Green Bank bears the development costs associated with the project. We're also responsible for the ongoing operations and maintenance costs throughout the contract term. You benefit by saving money from day one. Once the system is operational, you start accruing monetary credits directly on your electric bill, and that credit will come directly from Eversource. To walk you through it, on the screen here is the layout that we anticipate selecting for this particular project. And see it a little bit better on the left-hand side of the screen here, but it would be a carport installation in the parking lot here around the facility. As an overview of the specs of the carport, the system would be designed at just over 1.3 megawatts DC, and it will produce just over 1.72 million kilowatt hours in the first year of production. In chatting with Sam and staff on site, we did build into the RFP to ensure that the carport itself will have at least 12 feet of clearance for vehicles that need to go under it. And the carport structure will also include snow rails and gutters for snow and stormwater management. Looking specifically at the economics here based off of the layout that we just reviewed, the solar system would be providing the school district with a credit for every kilowatt hour of electricity that the system produces of 5.41 cents per kilowatt hour. Year one, that would equate to just over $93,000 in on-bill monetary credits on your electric bill. And over the PPA term, you would be looking at $1,755,300 in on-bill savings. In addition to the financial benefit, the environmental benefits that are associated with the system, and that it will offset 1,157 metric tons of carbon dioxide each year that you have solar install. And you can see the equivalencies here broken out on the screen. As I mentioned at the beginning of the call, in terms of next steps, we would ask that you review the information that's provided today. And I believe, are on the agenda for a formal vote on your meeting on the 26th. A resolution to authorize execution of the PPA has been provided, as well as our template version of the power purchase agreement for your review. Once the project is approved and we have an executed agreement in place, then we would formally commence development at that point in time.
Mitch?
I believe that is it for me.
Thank you, thank you. On page 8, we talk to the cumulative savings estimate for 1 year and again for the term. What is that based on?
So year one, if you take the year one production estimate and multiply that times the credit value of 5.41 cents per kilowatt hour, you'll find that it equals the year one savings estimate of $93,212. If you take that math and multiply it by 20, you'll see that it does not exactly tie out with that $1.755 million figure, and that's because we are factoring in degradation of the system over time. Meaning that the system won't produce as much in year 10 as it did in year 1, and it won't produce as much at the end of the term as it did in the preceding years. So we're factoring in that degradation into the model upfront to give you a more accurate estimate in terms of the anticipated savings from the project.
Okay. I had one other question regarding degradation of the system, and that's usually decreased efficiency. At that point, what happens? Because we could potentially have this stuff sitting in the parking lot, and I kind of like the idea of a carport thing. I'm sure everybody would like that, keep their cars clean, cool in the summer and warmer in the winter. But what happens at that point? Is there going to be a removal of equipment, or does it have to be replaced? And is the school system going to be responsible for that?
Yeah, great question. So you have a bunch of options that are outlined in the power purchase agreement template that's been provided. So to give you kind of an overview, first and foremost, you always have the option to buy out the system for fair market value at the end of the term. Your second option would be to extend the PPA above and beyond the initial 20-year term. This is a 20-year agreement to match the length of the revenue contract that we're securing with the utility company, but the actual expected useful life of the equipment is typically 30 to 35 years. Modules themselves, as an example, will be warranted for a 25-year period, but the expected useful life extends well beyond that. You'd also have the ability to just have us come and remove the equipment at the end of the PPA term. That would be on our dime. And the last option that would be available to you would be to remove the equipment and then renegotiate a new PPA at the end of the power purchase agreement term. Bunch of options available to you. I generally anticipate that, a year out, you'd probably reach out to us and start trying to work through the math and figure out what makes sense and what you guys are interested in pursuing.
Thank you.
Jay, you have your hand up?
Yeah, Mitch kind of anticipated one of my questions about what happens at the end of life, but in the meantime, if there's damage to the system or the system fails, components fail, someone hits it, or there's a storm that damages it, the green bank owns and maintains all the equipment over the life
That's right, so
of the
Green Bank,
agreement.
yeah, so I just wanted to cut you off there. Green Bank will carry our own insurance on the system, we own it, and we also carry the manufacturer's warranties that are associated with the system. If there are warranty claims throughout the contract term, yes, working through our operations and maintenance provider.
Okay, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
You may have already covered this, but I'm just kind of looking for maybe a simple clarification. So out of those options at the end of life, at the 20-year point, one of those options includes the extension of the PPA. That would include extending all the protections and supports that come with that PPA, as far as the, as Jay just mentioned, maintenance and repair and insurance.
Yes, if it's through a power purchase agreement, that's correct. If you chose a buyout option as an example, you would then own the system and then, maintaining it and ensuring it would become your responsibility.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, just from the hip, I would say that's part of the value here, in my opinion, is that we are, for lack of a better term, offshoring the cost of maintenance, repair, and insurance. Like, we're contracting with Green Bank, if I'm saying that correctly, so that they handle everything. They're providing, it's a service that we're contracting. We're providing land and space to put the equipment in. Eversource is benefiting from taking power in and reducing their burden to the region. And we're benefiting from reducing our costs. And Green Bank is benefiting from having, more contracts to negotiate better rates with Eversource. So I see sort of the triangular relationship there, and so when the time comes, I think that the natural thing to do would be to just extend the PPA, and continue the services, but that's, 20 years down the road.
We'll have a lot of data then to look at.
And I'm not sure if I'm going to be on the board of that. But, I appreciate the presentation, and I also noticed, just looking at the parking lot, in the graphic that you showed, there's still a number of lots that are open that would not be covered by this initial installation. Is that on account of the angle of the sun and the orientation of things, or is that space that maybe more carport solar panels could be placed?
So that's certainly part of it. The other part I would say is that we looked very closely at the on-site load for the facility. You all have 2 meters on site, so that was part of the sizing exercise that went into this. And there is space there, so if we always wanted to oversize it and allocate credits to other accounts that you all are paying for, you have the ability to do so as well. We can certainly investigate that if that's something that you're interested in, but it's sized based off of the load for the facility currently.
Understood. Well, I can't speak for the board, but as an individual member, I definitely would be interested in looking at those options if this program continues to be successful. And it's so far, based on the math that you're showing, it seems like we are on the positive side of things. We're doing well. So, thank you.
When would the project begin?
Good question. So we will start development as soon as we have an executed agreement in hand with you all. I believe the formal vote will take place on the 26th. I would encourage you to have the power purchase agreement reviewed prior to that meeting if you anticipate any comments or edits. That way we're ready to sign the agreements that last week in May or very early June to begin commencing development of the project. We won't be able to submit into the incentive program until 2027. With the carve-out of incentives that I mentioned, they require that your project be fully developed and essentially ready for construction before you're eligible to submit for the utility incentive. And we would anticipate doing so next year, which is the last year of the current commercial incentive program that's available. So time's kind of the essence to begin development as quickly as possible to make sure that we get in the queue for next year before the program closes.
And who puts the power purchase agreement together?
Katie, I think you put the agreement together. We'll probably have it checked through our board attorney, right?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
And that will be ready for the board to look at before the May 26th meeting.
Will that be ready for us to take a look at before the meeting?
So I've already sent the template.
Okay.
So you guys can begin reviewing it whenever you have time. But I would recommend, if you haven't already sent it after this meeting, I would definitely send it over.
Yeah.
The goal would be to have that in final form before the meeting on the 26th.
Okay, yep. I know that my admin assistant, Joyce Meddling, has been on that, so she might have even sent it to Floyd already. So I'll find out tomorrow.
Jen, you have a question?
I have two questions. You had mentioned our credits won't take effect until 2027, but let's say we have all the documentation signed, I'm assuming you would start construction like in the summertime, so it could be up and running by 2026. So until our credit starts, who's benefiting from 2026 to 2027? That's a big assumption on my part, so you could correct me there. And then second, in one of your prior presentations, you probably determined how the 5 cents was calculated, but if 7 cents, there's a big differential now. Is there a potential to make the 5 cents into 7 cents?
So I'll start with the first question, which is timing. Generally speaking, you're looking at about 12 to 18 months of development on these projects before your system is going to be operational. So if you sign it by, let's say, the first week in June, we probably would not be installing this system until the tail end of 2027. You're not going to have any credits that are accruing between now and then.
Okay.
Your financial benefit does not start until the system is commercially operational. So it has to be installed, producing electricity, and that's when you're going to start seeing the benefit of those monetary credits from the project.
Okay. I was just, sorry, thank you, because I was assuming you guys install over the summer and it would be basically up and running like by the fall of this year, but no, thank you for that.
Yeah, I wish that was the case, but we have to go through interconnection approval with the utility company, permitting locally. There's going to be engineering, both structural and electrical, as part of the process. And then, procurement of materials, installation. It's a pretty lengthy approval process that we have to go through before we'll be ready to install.
Okay.
Adrian?
And then the 5 cents.
Oh, the 5 cents.
Yeah. So the credit value is all determined based off of the anticipated cost of this system. So that is the RFP process that we just went through, where we went out for competitive bid for your project and a portfolio of other municipal projects. The layout and project economics that we're showing you are market conditions, and this is the best modeling out of the group of submissions that we've received. This is the max financial benefit that we can provide. If we get into development and there are cost-saving measures, we're able to pass along an additional benefit at the end of the contract term. We always do a true-up. That's kind of the final closeout piece of the project economics. Sam, remind me, I'm pretty sure that we were able to pass along additional financial benefits for at least one of the 2 projects that were previously installed at the end of the contract term.
That's correct.
Okay. So that's our standard process. If there's additional savings that we can pass along once we're through development, we do so, but as it currently stands, this is what the RFP results are indicating for your financial benefit.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Adrian?
Yeah, really just one question. Is there going to be any tree removal or structure modifications or anything else like we would be removing from the site to, clear a path to come to the panels?
I don't believe any tree removal is currently contemplated. If it is required, the tree removal cost and scope would be included in the EPC contractor scope of work, so it's not something that would be an additional cost to the district. And we would, review that with Sam and team and make sure that we have approval prior if it's flagged as a requirement. But as it currently stands, I don't believe it's anticipated.
Okay, Jay?
Yeah, I'll keep it quick. I was just remiss in not saying that with regard to how the current two systems are doing, wow. That's really amazing that they are producing above and beyond the Green Bank's expectations. And so I appreciate that. And also, for those who might be wondering why we didn't pursue solar at the Dr. Charles Barnum School, that was a totally different situation where we were going to own, maintain, and have to eventually remove and dispose of the system just because it's in a different utility area. So this is really apples and oranges compared to that.
Okay, Mitch?
I have 3 questions. One is to define development. My understanding is that development is creating the drawings and getting the approvals and then actually building. And do you hire subcontractors to do any of this, or do you guys do this?
Good question. So development would be the scope of work through our selected EPC contractor who would be in charge of engineering, procurement, and construction. So it's that full scope of work all the way to get your project ready for construction and actually completing the installation and commissioning the solar array at the end of the install process. So that's a full scope of work. Green Bank is a thing, so we finance renewable energy projects through our program. We essentially aim to make it an easy button development option where we're managing that front end process in terms of scoping the projects, going out for competitive bids to select that contractor, and then we manage that contractor on the back end all the way through the installation process through our on-staff solar project manager. So we stay involved throughout the entire equation. We're also your contract counterparty in this transaction, so the long-term owner of this asset. But we're not physically building it. That's why we go out for a competitive bid to select the contractor to build the project.
Okay, so if our director of buildings and grounds happens to walk out there and see somebody putting in a support post in the wrong spot, or a spot that's going to cause a problem, who would he talk to? And obviously, Sam, I'm talking about you, to get that fixed?
You all will see and approve the drawings before any on-site construction begins.
Okay.
So, the goal is to over-communicate here and not get to the point where we are at on-site construction and there's concerns over the layout. You guys will be reviewing and approving throughout the development process.
Okay, and I guess one other thing which is really directed towards the school, are there any changes to traffic flow or anything at all that's going to cost the school system money relative to this? And are you going to change the parking rules or something like that?
Sam, do you have an answer for that? Is it going to affect that?
Well, it may affect some parking spots, but I don't see any major changes to parking spots. You might lose a couple of parking bus flow and all that stuff. That's why we asked to make sure that they had the proper height to get the buses, et cetera, vehicles through.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? No other questions? So thank you everyone for your questions. All right, you have anybody else? Shannon, you want to make any comments? Or this isn't your thing? Okay.
Thank you, Katie.
Katie, you want to add anything to your presentation?
No, I appreciate everybody's thoughtful questions and comments, and look forward to working with you all on this project if we get that in a month.
Okay. Do we feel comfortable bringing it to a full board vote on May 26th for approval?
I'm good with it.
Okay.
It's exciting.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Katie.
My pleasure. Have a great evening, guys.
Thank you.
as well.
Would our attorney have a time to look at it before that?
Yeah, I think we've already sent it to him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm going to double check on that with Joyce tomorrow.
Is he in the practice of giving like a summary statement or like some comments on the contract, like what he thinks is positive?
I don't even know if it's Floyd or if he has someone specialized in the firm.
We could ask for that.
It'd be great to have like a pro-con.
We could ask for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jen.
Susan, when Floyd, I haven't seen the contract, right, but when Floyd's reviewing, if he can look into if solar panels are damaged, like what is the speed of them replacing some of the damaged cells, because last thing we want to do is like have these panels and then just some of them are not working.
Well, they own it, so it sounds like they're liable for any damage and they'd have to fix it.
No, I know, but then, but it could take them 2 weeks, or it could take 2 months, and then we won't be getting our 5
We
cents.
should have asked her that question.
No, I just think it's more of our contract, you know what I mean? Because if it's already in the contract,
Is it in the contract?
Yeah.
Which way you saying?
I was agreeing with, and they could, yeah, if you're putting in the contract is a great idea, because otherwise they could say, oh, we've had it done in a week, and then.
Yeah.
A year later.
Sam, go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that the earlier contracts that we had, Floyd he had somebody actually go through them, very fine-tooth comb, and they did make some changes, and I suspect that they'll incorporate those changes here, but again, he'll look at it very closely to make sure that it meets our needs.
Perfect. Yeah, because 20 years is a long time.
All right. Any other comments?
Hope it just keeps making those kind of savings. That's a good thing.
Hope they underestimate this one, too.
No, but it's not going to benefit us. Ours is only going to be 5, the way this one's written, it's always going to be 5%. So any increases in rates or price is going to them. It's working out differently. So that's why I was like, can the 5 become 7?
You said 5%, did you mean 5%?
5 cents, sorry, 5 cents. 5 cents.
But it's automatically on your bill, which I think is nicer than receiving a check or whatever, however we do it now. Because it'll automatically reduce the cost of the board's obligation each month.
Correct. But any energy increase in cost is theirs. But you know what? I'm okay with it because they own the equipment and they're responsible for taking that junk
That's
away
a big deal.
at the end.
Take it down.
Yes,
Take it down
exactly.
after 20 years.
Exactly.
Okay, next on the agenda is an update for grants, and I'll turn it over to Shannon.
Yes, so Susan asked me to provide just a brief update on some of the important grant applications that are in process right now. So at the regular meeting on April 27th, I shared that the Department of Defense has opened up their latest grant opportunity, and that this year is a new type of grant program. It's to fund construction projects within the district. So in order to be eligible for this grant, a school needs to have 15% or more military-connected students. Because of the size of the grant, so they anticipate that awards will range from $250,000 up to $25 million. We know that the total grant program is $100 million, and there's approximately 25 to 30 districts that'll be possibly applying from across the country. So we decided to meet with our, or we requested to meet with our representative from the Department of Defense, our primary liaison there, who we've worked closely with on all of our other grants that we've received. And we told her that we're hoping to use these funds to renovate Charles Barnum, and proposed a sort of preliminary number, and she gave us the green light to go ahead and apply for that. She felt that that sounded reasonable. She also shared that this grant program, they anticipate will be going on for several years, and that their goal really is to meet all the need across the country. So if by chance we weren't able to get the grant this year, then we could go into the pool again to reapply for next year and even possibly the year after that. So we reached out to the architects who had done the feasibility study on Charles Barnum back in 2017, and we met with them over at Charles Barnum last week for a walkthrough with Sam and Principal Sawyer were there, and Susan, of course. And we talked about a lot. We talked about what it would require to renovate the building, and we also started talking about the idea of building a new Charles Barnum on the field to the right of the building. So they're going to do a comparative analysis for us, including an estimate for both projects, and they're also going to help us put the narrative together, and because we really need to include a lot of technical information in this proposal as compared to our previous proposals, which are usually more focused on program. So I'm really grateful that they'll be helping us out with that. And the proposal is due on May 22nd. So I'm pretty confident that we'll have a strong proposal to submit. And yeah, are there any questions about that RFP at this time?
Any questions? Dean?
The purpose of the grant is to support the construction, renovation, repair, or modernization of public school facilities that serve military-connected students. So, in a given scenario, could that include the installation, the creation or installation of a practice field space for the robotics team?
Unfortunately, the percentage at Fitch is not 15%. Yeah, I think it's more like 11%. It fluctuates between
But that could
9 and
support
11.
something
It could,
at
yeah.
another facility that then would relieve pressure and maybe allows to reallocate funds somewhere else.
So I think the story behind Charles Barnum is it's our most military impacted school at 60%, and it's our oldest building. And, you know, in looking at even, you know, getting it more up to date, there's a lot of ADA compliance issues, so that's why they said they always do what would be billed as new versus what would be constructed. Also, we've had conversations with the State Department, the DAS, and looking at, you know, potential of getting, we've actually asked the architect that, you know, we could get these, or we've asked JDP, we could get these federal funds, but we can also look for local funds too to match it or expand it.
Yeah, one thing that our liaison made really clear too, and it is outlined in the RFP, is that priority will be given to construction projects that address health hazards, emergency needs, stuff that, yeah.
Well, I mean,
in the older buildings.
Regardless of my comment about the robotic space, I'm in support of this because Charles Barnum is in great need, and it's long overdue. So whatever we can do to, get that improved is good.
I also see this as opportunity. Shannon brings us opportunities all the time that do reduce taxpayers' burden. So even the work we're doing with Mary Morrison through the Office of Early Childhood, getting that building ready to take on, our early childhood program, this potential to really upgrade without burdening taxpayers is, I think, wonderful. We're always looking for that. So,
Yeah. So, so I should just mention, so we're looking to apply for between $10 to $12 million grant, and we would be seeking a school construction grant at the state level to match that. So,
Jen?
When you have, in this construction, do you need to identify, like, these are the things we're considering, or is it just like, and we'll move forward with it if we get the grant? Or can you say, these are the things we're considering, but then do something else? Because I was thinking more like in Charles Barnum, what are those buildings that are not attached?
The portables.
The portables? Like, is that one of the things you're thinking? You don't need to tell us, but...
no, we did have that discussion. We've talked about adding a wing because it's a 5-year grant. So in an opportunity like this, you could add a space and move kids over so that you can start fixing up the other older spaces.
So is it like 5 years? Let's say we get the amount. Let's say we get 10 million, and it's 5 years. Do we just get 2 million a year? Is that how that works, or we get the 10 million?
no, typically they provide, we're able to access as many funds upfront as we want. As part of the proposal, we try to project how much we will be needing from the federal government over the 5-year period. And so this one, like all of our other projects, the first year would be a planning year, and during that time we would also apply for the school construction grant too. So no construction would really get underway until the earliest the following year. But yeah, it's stretched out over 5 years, but it's more up to us as to when we need to draw down on those funds.
And then you had mentioned that, like, we have a potential to apply again. So let's say Mary Morrison is up and running and there's 30% we could apply there, and so we could have one for Charles Barnum and then one for Mary Morrison. Let's say it's the 2026 grant approval and then the 2027.
Yeah, I mean, it's a brand new grant program, so that's possible. I mean, that would be incredible.
That would be great.
but it would have to be for a school that meets the 15% or more. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for always finding these things.
Of course. Yeah, and then next on the list is the Smart Start grant. So I had updated the Finance Committee about this last week, but we did submit 3 applications for the Smart Start program. So the companion grant to our capital improvement grant, so for the 8 4-year-old classrooms. So that would be for operational costs for the coming year. And then we applied for an additional grant for 2 more classrooms because that program is already filling up. And then we also had to look ahead to the 2027-28 year and submit an application for capital improvements for the 3-year-old program. So those 3 were submitted May 1st.
And then there could be more capital coming with that, right?
Yeah, so the second grant for the 2 additional classrooms would be for both operational funds and for capital improvement funds for next year.
The 390?
Yes. Yeah, so that's the combined of 195 for each grant.
Yeah.
And then one other one that I just wanted to mention that isn't on this list, but Jeff Nichols with Treehouse and I were up in Hartford, or we were in Waterbury this week, and we learned that the grant program for the 21st Century program, the Roots program, currently over at Groton Middle School is open again. That application isn't due until late July, but We will be submitting for a second round for Groton Middle School for the Roots program, and I did talk with them about expanding it to the high school too. And they liked our idea and encouraged us and gave us like a few pointers on how to submit a compelling application.
Sounds like it was worth your day.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
yeah.
great.
Yeah, it's good to see those folks.
And I know that, in speaking with Jeff, with the Treehouse, it's an enterprise fund, and he takes that money that's coming through the parents, and it pays for everything to sustain the program, but also to grow the program. So he's talked about getting the program started anyway at the middle school while we're submitting these, waiting for the funds to arrive, so he can actually take on that responsibility. And then Mary Morrison, he's also startup costs for that program to have before and after care. So just to let you know what happens with some of those enterprise funds, they go really back into the organization, back to make it stronger and better for kids. So.
Yeah, that is very important because often, like depending on the grant program, sometimes the grants the funding itself does not become available to us in the EGMS system until technically after the program is supposed to have started. So that could be a little challenging on our end. So having that cushion with the Roots, with Jeff's program is very helpful and something that they're looking for too at the grant administrators.
When does the 21st Century Grant have to be in, like July?
Yeah, it doesn't go in until late July.
Okay.
That's pretty typical for those programs. Usually they're due in the summer.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you, Shannon. Much appreciated.
You're welcome.
Okay, next on the agenda is discussion in regard to board approval of grants. And this came from the referral list from Adrian. So Adrian, I'll let you talk about on your referrals.
Yeah, my intent with that would just be for the board to know what's going on with grants prior to the grants just coming to us after we've received them. And this would basically be for board members to have some input, or for the board, not members, the board as a whole, to have some input on the direction of the district and the vision of the district. So again, and a lot of times we also see grants come through where at the end of the grant we're looking at either adding an FTE or just eliminating the program altogether. So this again would allow the board to have some more input into what direction we're going to go as a district.
Any other comments about that?
Yeah, when Adrian made this referral, I expressed my support for it, and I think there is something worthwhile looking at as far as like how can the board be integrated into the process of searching for grants, or at least identifying like areas of need where grants could be targeted. Just like to have the conversation. So before you move forward on like pursuing the grants, which you've done fantastic job with, maybe like having some sort of like general like, okay, so what would the board like to seek grants for? Like what would we like to accomplish? And that could also ties into board goals, ties into like administrative goals, and just kind of like have a more holistic approach to like where we'd like to put the money. Again, like, well, I don't want to get into specifics, but in general, like, what I'm saying is like that would be the time to have those conversations. It's like, okay, well, here's a number of grants we've identified that's coming up in the next year or two, and here's some things that they could be used for, and it's not necessarily automatic, whatever, like it's just more like what's the board, input on where maybe what we should seek, how should we craft the grant, so when the monies are hopefully awarded, that they go to a place that we've identified as a need.
How can I help with that at this time?
I'm not sure. I think it's more of an internal thing to the board, but I mean, first off, do you feel like that would be disruptive to your process? If we timed it, if we put it in the right place in the timeline of events?
Well, as far as seeking grants, I don't believe it would be disruptive. I mean, if you know of funding opportunities that I'm not aware of, I'd be happy to hear about them. Just like a kind of a quick overview, what I typically do is, scan the state's various departments like a couple times throughout the year to make sure we're not missing out on any funding opportunities, and departments other than the Department of Education. Typically, the Department of Education will post all of their funding opportunities within EGMS. So I'm on EGMS multiple times a week. So if there's a new one that comes up, I usually see it right away. But when we apply for, say, like a securities grant or a technology grant, it's usually because I've looked at the Department of Management and Homeland Security's website just to see if there's any funding opportunities there that are available for school districts. So I try to go through pretty much every department periodically, and the same is true for the federal government also. I think, after working here for the past 10 years, I've kind of gotten like a better sense as to which are the federal opportunities that are really worth pursuing or not, because some of them are just so competitive that the likelihood of us getting it isn't really worth, I think, the time and energy that we put into it. But then others, especially if, as far as my schedule goes, if I have like a gap, an opportunity, I feel like, well, we might as well give it a shot. Right. And then as far as private funding sources, usually those are recommended to me. Like Ernie came to me to tell me about the Kendall Foundation opportunity, and he heard about that like through his professional network. So some of the other grant opportunities like that usually come from either teachers or administrators that are working in like a particular subject area. And there happens to be like a foundation, like the Dalio Foundation or Kendall, that is really interested in that subject area, and they're providing additional support for that. So often those, come to me. So if you hear of educational funding opportunities, I'm always happy to investigate them and see if it's something that I think we could be competitive for.
Also, Shannon works closely with the administrative team. And the central office
I wouldn't go apply
directors.
for anything on my own.
So she hears the needs. So and she comes to board meetings, so she hears the needs, and sometimes she'll come up with something, or sometimes we'll see something and send it to her. Yeah. So we're always kind of have our radar. So certainly have your radar ready, and if you see something that sounds like, we're still waiting on the COPS grant, which that really came as a need after what happened last year, but they have to be able to hire the right amount of people.
Yes.
Jen?
So I think you're doing a great job, right? I don't, and I'm going against my colleagues here, but I don't think we necessarily, I think maybe the word approval is like a misnomer here. Like maybe in the past there was less transparency, but now in finance and facilities, Rita is providing copies of the grants when they're expiring, and it's being shared here at will eventually be shared at the committee of the whole meetings. So there's greater transparency. Shannon does an amazing job, and I know we all work, or we have committed time, so I don't feel like we necessarily need to approve, or obviously if we find a grant we could share it, but for her to come and be like, hey, I want to apply for this, I don't necessarily think she could inform us. You know what I mean? Right. Like, hey, these are the things that like I've applied for. You know what I mean? And she's like, now I just feel like even in the past 2 years that we've been on, we're getting better data. So I don't know when that was originally placed, but I don't necessarily think we should limit her scope. And I might be speaking for you, but that's just my opinion. Yeah.
Dr. A?
I agree with Jen in as much as I'm more worried about how this affects Susan's job. this is her domain. This is the administrator's team domain. And I think we're overstepping our boundaries here. So that I think we need to, well, I'm going to be snarky here. So if we're going to do Susan's job, for heaven's sake, pay us. That's Susan. But this is her job. We have entrusted Susan with the running of the district, and we need to allow her the time and the space to do that.
Okay, thank you, Dr. A. Mitch?
I agree with Jen and Dr. A, and I think this person has enough to do without us interfering, and we have enough to do without getting involved too. The meetings are long enough. Thank you.
Well, and I think Shannon will bring quarterly reports too. She's brought reports to you to kind of keep you abreast of all the different grants. And now with Rita doing the same thing, I think we're getting more information. But certainly as you set your goals and, you're looking for opportunities around some of that work.
Yeah, I would, I'm sorry, Ian, I just wanted to say how grateful I am for Rita's, working with her on grants and reporting on them. It's, I think from her background up in Wyndham, where they received a lot of grant funding, it's just such a relief to me to have her be able to report on all of that. It's been great. I feel like we're being more thorough in our updates and reports because of her.
And I just want to say, I agree with all of those comments, and I understand where they're coming from as well. And I think, to be fair, this referral, I think, does date back. I remember having conversations about this.
Yeah, it leads back to 2024.
Exactly. So that's 2 years. It's a 2 years old, two-year-old referral. So I think in some ways it's dated because I think organically it already has a lot of the reforms that we were kind of looking at.
Well, I think even this is
have come to pass. And I appreciate the new finance director, and I think so. In a lot of ways, I don't think there's a great impetus, and I think that's a great point also of noting the approval like that. That is a charged word, and what my interest was more about just general targeting, in which talking about goals, talking about the administrative goals, board goals, and like I said, you've done a great job as far as just doing it organically, picking up on those things. So in the future there may be a thought towards formalizing that, so that as people move on from their positions, time is undefeated,
Sure.
So everyone, we all move on at some point. Maybe
It was 2025, Ian.
Huh?
But the referral.
Oh, 2025. Well, I know. Okay, so I think the referral made it in 2025, but I remember talking about it back in, 2023 and 24, initially, but. Anyway, long story short, I don't think there's a great impetus on trying to create something formal now, but I think there is something worth considering, broadly, to make sure that it's always, the practices that are being done now, maybe we craft policies to carry forward beyond this board and this current makeup of the administration and board relationship.
Well, I agree with Jen and Dr. A and Mitch. I don't want to interfere with Janet's job. She's doing a fantastic job getting us grants. If we have a focus, we want to concentrate on math, we could say to Shannon, please can you look and see if there's any grants that will help us with math. We could do that. But I don't want to, she's doing a great job. I don't think that she has to come and say, oh, I want to write this grant, do you all approve? Then it's an hour conversation or 2 meetings, and then it holds up the process of her getting the grant. I think that she's doing a fantastic job. People in the community respect what she's doing. And they didn't say, oh, board, you need to oversight what Shannon's doing because she's not doing a good job. So I said, let her go. And we can put on the agenda periodically update on grants. And we can put that on the template that we're going to revise.
That's a good idea.
Update on grants. But I don't think we need a policy or anything like that. I said, she's doing a good job. She's bringing us lots of money. She's worth her weight in gold. I mean, even the town now is getting a grant.
They want to do like we do.
Because they see how much money we're bringing in for grants. So we're blessed to have her.
Thanks.
Ian?
Yeah, I would just say that's a great suggestion, Bev, as far as like, blending this with the idea of the update to grants. And I would go one further on that and to say, maybe have that agenda item be an update on grants and goals, grants and goal alignment or something like that. So that, we can talk about how grants and goals align in the long-term vision.
Adrian?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that in this, it kind of makes it seem like I don't trust Shannon or something like that. At least that's the way it seems to be going through the meeting to me. And that is certainly not the case at all, that I don't trust Shannon. I just look at some of the grants in the past and maybe some that we've got running right now, where it seems that, there might have been better options for those, and specifically speaking for, maybe the DODEA grants. We've got one that's ending this year for foreign language, and that will come with 2 additional FTEs or not when we get to next year's budget. And, and I guess I'm assuming that we'll be reviewing if bringing foreign language into the elementary schools, is beneficial to our students. So I just feel that the board should have that discussion on something like that prior to the grant, rather than just having the grant go. Now we've kind of, specifically targeted a DODEA grant that maybe could have been, we may have been able to apply it to something else. So that's my thought, is that so that there's a little bit more discussion on that ahead of time.
Well, I tend to agree with Dr. A when she says that's the administration's job and not our job.
Can I just add something? One of the things you're seeing tonight, though, with the update on the new DODEA competitive grant for construction is just that. It's bringing it to you ahead of time to share, because I know this would be a big commitment, and I don't want to go get a grant and then say, oh, by the way, we have this amount of money. So that, and also the Office of Early Childhood, we've been trying to keep you abreast of these as we've been hearing more information and collecting and gathering. And I would even say with the partnership with Electric Boat, we've been sharing that partnership all along as we've developed it. But it wasn't till really this year that we heard about the funding potential and the ability to have a machine shop. And I brought that right away to the board so you would understand what the impact was. And we've had a lot of rich discussion and a lot of deliberation over that. So I don't think I just threw it there. I was really very mindful of having you have as much information as I had at the time. And then as we got more information, making sure you had that too. So this is an example.
I just wanted to add one piece. So the World Language Grant is actually ending next year, and it's the Career Pathways Grant that's ending this year. Just in case anyone's listening and is confused about that.
Okay, moving on. The next item is Board of Education goals. So we have our goals, and we don't review them as much as I think that we should be looking at our goals.
Thank you, guys.
And thank you, guys. And seeing how we're doing with the goals. So I'd like to have a little discussion on the goals and how we're doing with the goals. And pretty soon it'll be time to come up with new goals. I think we do it in August. I'm not certain, but I think it's in the summer that we come up with new goals. So, how do you think we're doing our goals?
I noticed we didn't have the goals in the packet.
Yeah, it's right on top.
Oh, okay, thank you. I was looking for a separate piece of paper. Good night, thank you.
So the first goal is focus on improving. You wrote a hand, Mitch, when we came up with these goals, so you could chime in and, say what you think, how we're doing so far. Focus on improving student learning outcomes. The second one is continue to align our expenditures with district priorities. The third is review building capacity based on expected demographic trends. And fourth is improve the flow of the board's business. And fifth is community engagement. So how do you think we're doing? Jen.
On the first one, I think Anne Marie and the team, whether it's the team that's looking at the Groton Middle School scheduling, mathematics, and English language arts, doing an amazing job there, setting the foundation, and we won't necessarily see it next year, but in 2 to 3 years, basically, we're planting the seeds. And so I have utmost confidence that even though we're not seeing it right now, we will see it in the future. So I think it's foundation setting and building at this point for number one.
Do you think we are focusing on student learning outcomes at most of our Board of Ed meetings?
Oh, like our meetings?
Yeah,
Like
I mean-
not like what the district's doing? So like having...
Well, they come to our meetings to
Yes.
report. So are we focusing on that enough, do you think?
Well, Lauren comes like 3 times a year?
I would say more than that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think on average, I mean, yeah. I mean, it depends on how you want to, like, define student learning outcomes. I mean, what are they learning and what are they, like, how do you measure outcome? How do you measure the learning? We know that test scores, standardized test scores, don't measure differentiated education very well at all. So, like, you know, there's a lot of concern about test scores, and we often frequently focus on that because it's an easy, tangible thing to focus on. But as I've long said, you know, that's the one question that during my teacher training, my instructors could not answer. When I asked, like, you know, how is it, you know, fair to use standardized tests when you're teaching differentiated styles? You know, like, you know, that's ingrained to us as teachers, as educators, to differentiate, to create a broad-based approach. To, you know, you want a ramp, not stairs. You know. So when we come to assess the learning outcomes, I think we need to adopt as differentiated an assessment matrix as we have an instruction matrix. So, you know, I think overall we're doing all right with that, you know, because we do focus on that frequently.
Okay.
But I think we do need to have some critical conversations about exactly what learning outcomes, exactly how they're measured and what they look like.
You have anything to say about that, Susan?
Well, you're reflecting the yardstick concept, but in our state assessments even, they've done a much better job at looking at other things like physical fitness and arts access and, you know, college career readiness and career pathways. So I think that...
Did they ever see the Groton yardstick?
I don't know if you ever saw the yardstick.
Maybe you
That
should
would be, yeah, I'm trying to
dig that
find it.
up. Way back when we came up, I think we came up with a document called the Groton yardstick, and how they're looking at the whole child, and not just test scores. So when we can dig
Yeah.
that up and share that with you.
I said they were-
We even presented it at a CAVE conference one time.
This
Yeah.
board was ahead of their day.
Yeah.
And when I got here, we kind of rebooted it, and I was so impressed that the state took a little broader brushstroke, looking at things beyond just test scores. But the test scores are a big piece of it, you know. But that's not the whole thing. That's not the whole story.
Yeah. All right, so what about the second one? Continue to align our expenditures with district priorities. How are we doing with that? Anyone online can answer that too. Mitch, you can answer if you want to. Jen?
Would you read that again, because I know the goals were supposed to be in our packet, but I can't find mine.
They're right on top of the agenda.
They're the front of the agenda.
Right on top of in the front.
The gray.
In the gray rectangular box.
Okay,
You see it?
It says mission statement and board goals.
Right under the mission statement, teaching and learning.
Oh, those.
Those.
Oh, I thought it was...
See, that's what we're talking about more often.
Don't get any on your alignment on that. I agree. It's hard to find.
no one I can make comment.
Go ahead.
Because I'm very opinionated. In regards to aligning our expenditures with district priorities, I think we are making that. Like initially, Adrian, like a year, 2 years ago, like spearheaded the investments in ELA at elementary school, and now in our budget we put in for funding for mathematics, you know, and then you just heard it, the presentation on ELA at the middle school. You know, we previously didn't fund our ROTC, and now we at least have some funding in there. So we are making strides, and we're making it more aligned rather than like, oh yeah, we're just going to put money here or whatever. So I think as we're deliberating through the budget, we are making systematic choices in our investments, whether it's in tutors, social workers, and the like. But that's me.
I tend to agree. Now, I'd be glad to have a conversation about district priorities. I think we're doing pretty well overall. But as a number of my colleagues and I have noted that sometimes, you know, it seems like some monies go. We have a lot of investment in the IB program, and I have concerns about, you know, those proportions. You know, I think the IB classes provide a valuable asset, but then again, that's right now it is a board endorsed district priority to invest in that program, and I believe like there's a general consensus to try to grow it. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think we need to revisit that, you know, from time to time, and take a critical analysis of, you know, of a cost benefit, you know, of investing, of deepening those investments. But overall, like, you know, they are aligned with the majority, like what the majority of the board has so far identified as district priorities. So I think, again, I would give us like a solid B+, you know, A- on that, to the text of the goal. With the caveat
That's a conversation I like to have about the IB, and when you said cost benefit, because how do we measure the cost benefit, the IB program?
Exactly, and that's how we determine our priorities. So, like, let's put it on the calendar, let's have that conversation. I'm ready to go.
Let's bring our camping gear.
I have notes.
Do you have anything that you want to say?
I'm not really sure what the district priorities are. It seems to me probably the intent of what I've seen in the time I've been here is people are working towards whatever they are. So I don't really have much else to say.
Okay. Well, the strategic plan will help with the district priorities.
Yeah, that would be it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, review building capacity based on expected demographic trends, and that's I think that long-term planning space committee is going to help with that when that gets up. So that's going to be Jen, Ian, Mitch, and Adrian going to be on that committee. Okay? Improve the flow of the board's business. How are we doing with that? Ian.
I'll say this, is that I've seen more turnover in this referral sheet, you know, and like, meaning turnover, meaning like things getting like handled and checked off over the past couple years. So it's great to see that, you know, we're using this as a guidepost for the COW meetings and really just trying to move through it. And, you know, if we don't come to a resolution, then it stays on the list. If we do find a way to move it forward or decide that it's not a thing we're going to pursue, it comes off the list. So overall, I'm satisfied with the flow. You know, it is, you know, there's a lot to it here. There's a lot of details, a lot of nuance, a lot of context we have to consider. So, you know, some things are meant to take a bit of time. Not every, like, you know, things that move too fast sometimes, you know, end up in a bad spot. So, like, I appreciate, I know the meetings can go on at length at times, and I know that, sometimes it seems like the procedures can work against progress, but I think it's necessary to have good checks and balances as a foundational principle to any government in any level, in any scale. And we are, tacitly a government body, because we're, represented, we're elected by the people to represent their interests and also to help manage the district, through the superintendent. So we have multiple aspects to consider from multiple directions. So it's a lot. Some things do have to take some time. So, but I think overall we do pretty well with the flow.
Jen?
I'll provide comment and feedback to all of these. So policy, so I have seen improvement because I'll be honest, when I used to see the policy items come on to our agenda, I would sit there and be like, oh God, we're going to be rewriting this at the Cal meeting. So being able, Beverly, this is you pushing back and sending it back to committee. I've seen a marked improvement there, so it's decreased the time of our meetings. So thank you for that piece of it. Improvement of the board business and flow. Sometimes I think our last meeting, the ones where we actually vote, we may have a lot of topic agendas, and even though we put time estimates, which is what I had suggested initially, we go over our estimates. So maybe we can cut down on some of the topics, but then I don't know where we would discuss it, so I have no solution for that.
Yeah, because the voting topic we only do once a month. So
Exactly.
We have to vote on something.
Yeah.
Well, I am not doing presentations like I used to.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to make it short and sweet and just let's get to the other business, right?
When there's voting action items,
Do the
no
presentations at the COW.
Yeah, right.
And
Yeah.
vote.
Presentations at COW.
Yeah.
Yes.
And my hope is that once we discuss stuff at COW,
We just vote.
we just
roll
vote.
into
It shouldn't be
it.
like another half an hour discussion because we already discussed it at COW. Not unless there's something new that comes up.
Yeah.
Somebody has something new that they didn't think of, they want to bring it out, then, but we shouldn't just be repeating what we said at the COW meeting. So, and community engagement, how do you think we're doing with that, Mitch? Season Mitch. How do you think that's one item I think we're not doing that well on, is community engagement.
Although, Jake,
I would challenge
Disagree?
terms and definitions.
Huh?
Community engagement, we all move at our own ways, So, when you say we struggle with that, what do you mean? What do you see as a
I
lack?
say that, are we getting into this, are we going to school events? Other than the events that your own child is in, that's easy enough to do, right? Because you
Not
have to go
anymore.
there,
I don't
right?
have any.
Now you don't, but you used to.
I did,
So
yeah.
they used to report, and I did too. You report, oh yeah, I went to the track meet because my kids run the track.
Yeah.
But did I go to anything other than what my kid was in? Are we going to the plays? Are we going to the concerts? Or, you work, so some of us work. Well, I don't work, so you don't go to the schools that often because you're working. But there's other stuff that
He works here.
Yeah, that's
I know.
fair.
You
That's
work
fair.
I said you work here.
I work.
You don't get paid.
no, none of you do, but you work hard.
So I don't think they do that because when we talk about letters and communications at the end of the agenda, I don't hear people say, "Oh yeah, I went to I went to Charles Barnum and I heard their concert. I went to Fitch High School, and I happened to go to Fitch High School one day for the band Palooza. I went up there, and that was great. But I didn't report on that in communications, but that's how I could tell if we're out in the, So maybe we need some other ideas. Maybe I want to put on. I'm going to ask Susan. I think I would discuss this with Susan. Put it on Parent Square, asking parents. I think I asked you too, Jen. I talked to you about it. What is one thing in 2026, 2027 year you would like the board to accomplish?
I have thoughts. Anyway, like, finish yours, please.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I want to ask Susan to put that out in Parent Square, and I was even thinking if people don't reply, we could say, okay, 2 board members will be at Groton Public Library on June 30th or something like that. I don't know if you all agree to do that, but you know, Matthew used to talk about that, getting us out and telling the public where we would be, and if they want to come and talk to us about education. I tried it once with Harry Watson, when he was the mayor of the town. We tried it, but maybe we didn't pick a good day. We picked Saturday morning, you know. Maybe we have one person here and there that would come, and then eventually we stopped doing it. But we did try to reach out to the community. So, go ahead, Ian.
I was going to say, you know, your suggestion and note about board members showing up to random events that are not necessarily personally connected to them. I think that's a great point. And I think we should all keep that in mind and do as best we can, you know, whenever our schedules allow to pop in to events and, you know, to facilitate school visits too, do walkthroughs. And I'm not sure, I have to revisit the policy of where that process currently stands. Because I think there were some like check-in.
Oh yeah, if you want to go visit the
procedures.
school, you let Susan know, and you contact the principal and see. So it's like when Jen and I went to Charles Barnum a week or so ago. I contacted Mrs. Sawyer, and I said Jen White and myself would like to come on May 4th in the morning. I mean, 9 o'clock. Is that convenient for you? And she called me up and she said, 9's not good, can you come at 9:15?
Okay.
And we ran it through Susan, and we went. And that's how Jen and I do it.
Yeah, well, that's great, because, you know, that's something, you know, I don't think I put enough time into as far as doing actual site visits, you know, during operational hours, as far as, like, the functions of the school. Like, I mean, going to school plays, athletic events, you know, I do managed to drop into a fair number of those, not so much over the past year, but prior to that, yes. So it's good to know that it's mostly just like a notice with like a hint of permission request, like where it's like if there's nothing actually prohibiting us showing up, that it's pretty much like we're good to go.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, principal would want to know, because then they kind of enjoy taking you to the building and showing you some things too.
Yeah.
It's a nice way to get to know them too.
To the Parent Square thing, though, that kind of circles back to, you know, the idea that I floated out there a while back about a board survey, a board-sponsored survey of, you know, the student community and the parents, caregivers, you know. You know, so it sounds like we're kind of in alignment on the general idea of that, because you're talking about using Parent Square to reach out in that effect.
Ask one question now.
Well, would you
It's
ask
not
one?
really a survey. It's like what they want to see the board accomplish.
But some people kind of fumble and stumble with that, you know, like they're not sure how to articulate it, so you gotta ask them some more, you know.
We do have a
targeted
survey
questions.
that will be reported to you very shortly too,
Yeah.
that parents have already taken, but I think,
So anyway, I think that would be another way to look at community engagement.
I think
How do we do that?
Can I get Mitch
Yes,
first?
please,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
No.
first, I talked to him.
Go ahead, Mitch.
I was going to say, I think more information fed to the town council and the RTM would be useful. Not to give you more of a load of work to do, but if somebody came and reported on some of the things going on, I saw you give one presentation, and it was great, okay? And I know that I was at an RTM meeting, and I know that people there appreciated knowing what's going on. You don't want to be known just as showing up when you need money.
no, I've actually gone 4 to 5 times this year to RTM, so I've really made a point.
Yeah.
But I also give them the weekly updates, so they get each week, and they've been very appreciative, the ones I guess that have read it have said to me, they really enjoy keeping up with what the schools are doing, so it is something. The board,
But I think Mitch is really talking about, and that could be for me too, to go to their meetings too. Because when you're more face to face, you could build a better relationship than sending them, this is what the schools did this month or this week. That's not really building a relationship. That's just giving them information. It helps to build relationship.
And they're directly.
I always try with Ian to build relationship, but he's not having it with me.
Well, we have a relationship. The dynamics of the relationship are, yeah, worthy of discussion. But
Yeah, you know that, Mitch? Yeah.
As we're going to these places and sending representatives, we need to ensure that it's positive and we're sharing good information and that we are projecting positively about the district.
Right.
We can't just have somebody going and then destroying the district.
We all have to be on the same page.
We have to be on the same page. We have to be on the same, basically, queue. So if we are going to do that, that is something I would like you to consider. Not that we come out with a speech, but here are the 5 key things. If somebody asks us, this is what we're working towards and this is what we're doing, and we are coherent and we are a group. We are not like there's a cohort of 6 and then there are a cohort of 8 or whatever it may be, but we all need to speak. So that's my only thing. And then community engagement, I do agree. Like, we could probably do more, like when there's parent-teacher meetings, maybe we could have a table where parents can stop by. You know what I mean? Like, the first night, like when the kids come with their parents to the high school open house, we could do that. Maybe like have a table at a basketball game, a football game, whatever it may be, whatever sport there is. So yes, maybe we could do a little bit more of that. I know at one point we used to do this, adopt a school, but then it went away. Maybe we try it again. Maybe the environment's different. I don't know. Sean, Jay, and myself are on that committee, so I'm basically giving myself a bad grade.
All right. Yes, and when I speak, I try to, like, if the newspaper calls me up and they say, you know, your budget's getting cut, what are you gonna do? You know, I always say, I don't know, because the board hasn't spoke on it. I don't give any suggestions unless the board has spoke on it. So I try to speak in unison and don't say, oh, we're gonna cut this, we're gonna cut this. I always say, the board hasn't voted or discussed it yet, so. Anyway, okay, review of the referral, thank you for that feedback, that was great. Review of the referral tracking sheet, anybody have anything for that? No?
I don't have anything to add.
I do.
You do? Go ahead.
Yeah, you asked, like, at the finance and facilities to kick it back up, is the,
Rich left at 7:55, Joan.
oh my goodness, now I can't remember what you told me to kick back up to,
Oh, was it the fragment program?
No, I said, no, you take care of that. It was about the budget. Wasn't it? Wasn't it about the budget? If we're going to, the budget to be a COW meeting or a special meeting.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
Adrian did remind me that he thought you were talking about having it as a COW meeting because you could vote at the COW meeting, but at a special meeting, you can't vote.
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, I mean, you can vote, but it has to be very specific
You
to
can't
the
vote at
agenda.
the COW, you can at the special.
We vote
Yes.
down to 4 board members.
Oh.
And not legit.
Oh, yeah.
oh, okay.
Okay. All right.
We can postpone that.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
I'm
you.
gonna tell Mitch that. Okay. Thank you.
Huh?
I didn't realize that Jay and everyone else left.
Yeah, I knew Jay left. Jay left a while ago.
All right,
Yeah.
Rich.